Alright, and welcome back to the latest adventures of the Monk and the Monarch. As always, it's me, the Monarch, and my co host, Mildra the Monk.
Hello.
We're talking about an interesting one. None other than Shinichi Watanabe, better known as Nabeshin.
Yep, the guy who gave me a bit of a hard time because of my height. Or rather, I think he kept wanting me to bend my knees because he didn't want to look up.
I
I think he was just trying to mess with me.
am pretty
Oh,
sure that is 90% of that man's life is messing with other people.
yeah. I will note, just as a bit of an aside, that trying to look him up as far as details and the like is annoyingly tricky because you still end up getting Shinichiro Watanabe in search results.
It is literally a one consonant sound difference between their two names. Not to
But
be confused with also the other Shinichi Watanabe, who is a famous Japanese snowboarder.
yeah, that does.
All got popular at relatively the same period of time.
You ever think that somebody in Japan, when reporting on one person, messed up the name and and mentioned the other?
Oh, I'm sure it happened.
No,
I'm pretty
somebody's
sure that's
reporting
why
it
he
as
goes by Nabeshin, in part.
well. Apparently the outfit and him growing out the fro was his way of trying to stand out.
One thing I will start with, I made a slight mistake when we did our talk on Suda 51. I mixed up my quotes from just weird motherfuckers. It was not Suda 51 who claimed the idea for the name came from God. That was Nabashin. I was blending my weird motherfuckers together for a minute there.
In all fairness, a name like Nabeshin is, as much as this may sound weird to say, very Japanese. And the reason I say that is because Nabeshin is a portmanteau of Nabe in Watanabe and Shin in Shinichi. And that sort of mashing names together to create nicknames is something you see a lot if you spend way too much time looking into Japanese pop culture like we do. I mean, there's a reason I keep using that Japanese wordplay gag.
It's also kind of funny. There's another weird similarity between both Watanabes, and that is how quickly they kind of moved up the ladder in terms of like their position on an animation team.
Hmm.
Whereas with Shinichiro, he started doing like the project management stuff and then very quickly became the director for Macross Plus. I know he says he was probably better listed as assistant director, but that was still a very quick time to move up that fast. In the case of Nabashin, he started as an assistant, like a production assistant, and was already on to episode directing before the end of the first series he worked on. I cannot find anything he has done prior to that.
The earliest thing I can find when it comes to Nabeshin is being a production assistant and episode director on a handful of episodes for Mr. Ajiko,
Yeah, that would be the project.
and that was in the late '80s, from '87
Yeah.
to '89.
And I do remember from one interview he said he started in the industry at 22, which that's about what he would have been during the time he started on this project.
One of the other things that is worth noting that he's probably the most infamous for is putting some version of himself in some of his works, or sometimes just showing up in other people's works, even though he has nothing to do with it.
I believe that actually happened before he put himself into Excel Saga 2. But it's not a project he's really listed on, so I'd have to do some digging to remember what the show was. But yes, he's appeared as Nabashin in someone's show before his own. I can't think of another director that's really done something like that before.
I should know when it comes to looking up the track record with directors, the thing that can make it a bit tricky is you have a lot of a lot of entries that are storyboard director for a few episodes. That sort of revolving door of storyboard directors or episode directors that we've talked about in the past. He's no exception to that. I'd say if there's anybody who didn't quite fall into that whole having a crap load of storyboard directors entries, it would probably be Shinichiro. He doesn't really have that. He kind of leapfrogged through it.
I don't think Cone did too much of that either, if I remember right. That said, it
I
is kind of a little funny with Nabeshin. He is weird in that he is so like distinct and well known, but when you look at his actual list of directorial works, they're not that many.
Not really. I mean, his debut work was Fair Than Partly Piggy, which is based on a picture book.
And it's worth noting he directed half of it, and someone else directed the other half.
Being involved with the first Gravitation OVA, I don't know why his storyboard work with Da Capo of Love is listed as a directorial work. That's not a storyboarder is not a director.
He did still direct that episode, though. He
Um,
probably did both, and I think they just listed him as storyboard on the wiki. But he was the episode director for that one.
Now, of course, the big one that he's the most known for is adapting Koshi Rikudo's Excel Saga.
That
Because of how
show's
that
true.
thing got presented, I think a lot of people have this idea that he was responsible for Excel Saga. When no, that was an adaptation of a manga by Rikudo Koshi.
No, I don't think most people think that just because at the beginning of every episode, he's either threatening or bribing the author to let him get away with doing whatever he wants in the anime.
Oh yeah, it is very much a shit post. In fact, there's a small part of me that wonders if Excel Saga could be considered an early Japanese example of a crackfic, much in the same way that I've called Discworld a crackfic
Yeah.
in terms of literary fantasy.
No, I will say in relation to Excel Saga, it's a hard show to recommend just because it is a very funny and clever show if you understand the references and the things it's poking fun at. If you don't know what he's talking about and weren't around at the time, I can imagine this show just looks like a string of absolute nonsense. Which, I mean, it still kind of is that, but it's clever nonsense.
Pretty much.
And so this is another thing that's going to make talking about him a little hard and potentially underwhelming considering how weird this guy is. Like any other director we've talked about, we generally went over like themes they've gone into and aspects like that. Considering the shows of his I've seen and what I've gotten from his interviews, I think it really just comes down to this guy's a goofy fuck.
Yeah, I don't. I would also say that the it is you're dealing with a very competitive market when you're dealing with anime production, and it's important, and finding ways to stand out is crucial. And his means of standing out was not to stand out by just being the highest end of art house directors or writers or the like, but by essentially creating a myth around himself.
You know, like I know
That's
he's pretty much come out and said like that was the initial reason he grew out the afro and started wearing the red suit everywhere.
well, the red suit could just as well have been because he's a fan of Lupin the Third.
He's actually corrected that. He was a fan of a guy from some live action Japanese series. I forget what it's called off the top of my head, who would do everything in a suit. He was actually disappointed when he found out that guy did that in the show because he was a fan of Lupin.
That works. That fits way too well.
Yeah. I will say, I did see an interview with him from 2023 at OhioCon. He wears the same suit and still has the afro and glasses. This has not changed for 24 years. And the same fan.
Yeah. Then again, I've mentioned this elsewhere, but you can if you look at certain mangaka, they'll have their own way of presenting themselves in their work. And one could easily argue that this is just another form of that.
I don't know if anyone else does it this directly. I could be wrong there, though.
Uh, I'm pretty sure. Um, maybe the guy behind Gintama, who will occasionally show up as the monkey. Don't ask me why he portrays himself as a monkey. No one knows.
I'm sure there's like a handful of people behind the scenes that are laughing at the in joke that we just don't know.
That is certainly a possibility. But when it comes to when it comes to him, he kind of ended up building a legend around himself, or I guess legend is not the best word. Built himself into becoming a living meme.
I don't think he has any problems with that either.
No, as he was looking for a way to stand out and becoming a meme that gets utilized would certainly fit.
Yeah. But yeah, like I was gonna say, like, what was his next project? Doto Koni-chan. It's one that I don't think's ever really came out of Japan in any official sense.
No, and with it was an early work by Shaft as well, although he only directed the first half of it.
That said, the pattern continues. This is not a very serious show from anything I've looked up on it.
It's the equivalent of a gag manga, especially since you look at the characters and everybody is some sort of in joke.
But yeah, the next somewhat big one, I would say. I don't think was ever a huge success anywhere but Puni Puni Poemi.
Oh yeah, this infamous one.
Like we talked about it a bit, but this is where I got the title for this one. It's that little bit of lost media. Like if you bought the DVD, you had that just half true story of the production of Puni Puni Poemi, where the producer described Nabeshin as having an irresponsible personality. Half of that thing is just shit talking Nabeshin.
Remember, Puni Puni Poemi wasn't a show originally. It was an in joke in Excel Saga that he decided to just decided to go all the way with.
It did not go well. Almost all of the work was done within like a couple of days on the episodes because just nothing was getting done for the longest time until eventually it all kicked into gear, and then everyone just basically gave up on the project after that 2 days. It ends on a cliffhanger because just no one wanted to finish it.
Then again, what can you expect when you're basically trying to make a entire anime off of a joke?
They didn't even have a premise for the whole show. They figured they could just do it as they went because, hey, they got the Rurouni Kenshin guy in on this. He's a great writer. He'll be able to come up with something. On the spot, apparently not.
I'm pretty sure even the greatest writer alive couldn't come up with something on the spot when you give him nothing to work with. If somebody wanted to have somebody create something from whole cloth, I think the only way to do that would be to do the writing equivalent of a Mad Lib, which actually would be kind of funny. Then again, I just realized that's what I described as basically the Channel A card game.
But no, I don't get the impression Nabeshin is really all that upset about this. I'm pretty sure he approved that right out going out with these volumes.
And besides, a year later he would do XD Danger Zone, which is a bit more sane coming from him.
That one I've still not watched.
I feel like I have. I just can't remember.
That said, he's not listed as the director. Like, it's listed under directorial works on his wiki page. You go to the action. Oh, wait, no, he didn't. Which one did he direct? He directed one of the
Danger
two
Zone.
OVAs.
Yeah.
Danger Zone.
Which I guess you could say working on that is him coming off of his cocaine high. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
He had his moment of crazy with that. Then right after that he ends up going right back to comedy because then he's working on adapting Nerima Daikon Brothers.
I know that's the musical one. I should note, he did direct Tenchi Muyo GXB just prior to this. I don't remember a lot of people really caring for this one back in the day.
This is one of those ones that is loaded with in-jokes.
Yeah. Time is definitely, like, giving this one more of a fan base than it originally had, at least here in the West. I didn't care for this one too much. Maybe if I gave it another shot, I would. But it does seem like something up Nabeshin's wheelhouse. Tenchi's a kind of goofy series.
And when it comes to Tenchi GXP end of things, well, Tenchi itself is a bit of a rabbit hole just concerning how many spin-offs that there have been, how many spin-offs and how many side projects there's been. In fact, because of that, it makes going back to like the original Tenchi Muyo almost quaint. Of course, after that was the Wallflower, which I remember seeing the manga on shelves when I'd walk into my bookstores. Yes, I said bookstores. But beyond that, I don't remember too much about it.
I know it's another one with like a very small and strong following.
It is the fact that I think if he didn't get into doing anime, he would have been part of a comedy duo or something like that. Not only say that because the comedy duo seems to be a popular act in Japan. You don't really see a whole lot of solo comics.
I know in one interview he said if he wasn't an anime director, he'd still want to be doing something in anime. Like, that's just seems to be he didn't want to do anything else in life other than do something related to the anime industry.
Which is certainly admirable.
We obviously won't be getting into like every one of like the episode things he's directed.
Yeah, because there's a lot.
That said, I did like surf through some of them because I didn't realize until recently he directed an episode in Bleach. So I decided, let's see what episode he actually did. It was, of course, one of the episodes with the spiritualist guy with the TV show. And it was one of the goofy, just filler episodes with him. If there was an episode in all of Bleach he did, it's going to be something related to that guy. But other episodes, it was like the Joe Cot Springs episodes in a different show.
I feel like that if we did enough digging, we'd see that as a pattern.
Oh yeah.
Of him just coming in to do like beach episodes or gag episodes.
Like that's why you get Nabeshin, is you want something really silly and goofy. And that just seems to be what he loves to do more than anything else.
Yeah, when he's not goofing off in just about everything else.
Oh no, like
I'd imagine that he probably likes doing conventions because it's a way for him to do something silly very easily.
Yeah. He does a lot of conventions.
Well, in conventions he's not going to have to get the most amount of it in his style without having to do too much work.
Now, I remember there was one one big interview he did in 2013, like a short while after he had a heart attack. Apparently what had happened after he had his heart attack is while he was in the hospital, he realized he could control his heart rate, and he started fucking with the doctors. At which point they're like, if you can do this, I think you can go home now.
Of course, whenever it comes to these kind of stories, you have to take things with a grain of salt.
True, but at the same time, he did get out of the hospital really quick because he went to a convention shortly after when he was talking about this. So it wasn't too bad of a heart attack. And I 100% believe Nabeshin would have done that.
It's just, of course there's the fact that if there's anything that's going to be the standout for him, as mentioned, it is him showing up in anime.
Again, it's weird that he's also showing up in other people's anime. That's the one that throws me. Like, his own anime, alright, but everyone else is like, yeah, we want you in ours too. Not so much these days.
He's still doing that. That kind of thing is still still happening to some extent.
I just mean he himself, I don't think, has shown up in anything in ages. He seems largely fine right now, just kind of taking it easy, storyboards and episode directing. Again, though, despite how weird and interesting this guy is, it makes him kind of hard to talk about because I really don't think there's much deeper than what he just presents at the surface. All of his interviews kind of end up going the same way. He just shows up, goofs off with whoever is interviewing him, and then everyone leaves just kind of happy.
Shows up, goofs off, refuses to elaborate, leaves.
He did elaborate the reason why his suit's red is because that's the color of a man's soul.
See, that is something I could see anyone saying just to mess with someone.
He also insists there is no hair care product used to make that afro. There's some doubt to that statement, but I'll go with it.
I don't see him doing any major directing anytime soon. I think it's far more likely that he's just gonna show up here and there.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does another show of his own at some point.
I have a feeling because Japan really loves anniversary works. At some point somebody's gonna throw money at him over that. Call it a hunch, but it's certainly not an unfounded one because we've seen that happen before of works showing up to celebrate some sort of anniversary that ends in a 5 or a 0.
And we're getting close to a 25th anniversary of Excel Saga.
I have a strong feeling you're going to see something show up for that.
Oh, that'd make me happy. I love that show. He should make an anime out of the other fake anime in Excel Saga. The one about the samurai going to America, I think it was.
I would only approve of that if he pulls the same stunt that Sukiyaki Western Django did. Having a bunch of Japanese voice actors trying to speak English. For those who haven't seen it, Sukiyaki Western Django is a film by Takashi Miike, even though he doesn't do anime as much as he does live action, he deserves an episode all on his own, just because of all the crazy that he's been involved with. I'm going to do a Western adaptation of the tale of Genji, styled in the Old West, and have a bunch of Japanese actors trying to speak English throughout, and then a cameo by Tarantino because why the fuck not? While also trying to make some allusion to the War of the Roses. It was a weird thing. I could see Watanabe trying to do that, of trying to get some actors to speak English throughout. It would be absolute chaos, but I could see him trying to do that.
I mean, absolute chaos is where Nabeshin excels.
And apparently there was also him supervising a anime based on the Monster High series of toys.
Yeah, I think that was his last major project in 2014. Said I have no interest in Monster High. I almost want to watch his take on it, though, just because why would you give Monster High to Nabeshin?
I'd say a series of people not realizing what they had done.
I can 100% imagine, whatever board was, in charge of Monster High over here in the West had no clue who Watanabe was when he took the project. Just someone on the Japanese side that they were working with, oh yeah, I got a great guy for that project.
Yeah, that is probably what would end up happening. I don't think he would just go off on his own or anything like that.
He probably stuck within the bounds of what you would try to keep the feel of whatever he was working with. As crazy as Excel Saga got, a lot of it was still in the vein of what the manga was. The feel was there. So I imagine you'd see something like that with his take on Monster High.
It's not something I'm going to prioritize actually looking into, but it is amusing nonetheless.
That said, despite like how strangely prolific Nabeshin was for those few years and how many people still know him, I don't think we have a whole lot more to talk about in relation to him.
Not really. He kind of showed up, caused a bunch of chaos, and created a ripple effect for years.
He's not really a guy who regularly dives into certain themes or anything. Even
No,
his
it's like
interviews just say he just likes to make people laugh.
even when you look at the stuff that he has been involved with, it's usually some form of comedy.
Even his episode, like just single episode directing notes, are usually just goof episodes, even if it's a more serious show. I believe in one interview he said he never even watched Bleach. So yeah, I guess any final thoughts?
I'd say that about covers it.
So while not as in depth as some of our other directorial discussions, I'm still happy Nabeshin's a thing. He left a mark regardless of anything else. So all right then, I guess here we wrap it up.
We will be back here next month.
Topic still undecided for that, but you can also catch us this Thursday for Valley of the Judged. We'll get into a bit more of the crunch on Curse Brand. Had to
Yeah,
think about the name for a second there.
which well, I think it's because we only just started with Curse Brand while we've been doing Shattered for several weeks.
Yeah, I almost said Shattered at first. Right then, we'll catch you guys next time.
Stay frosty.